You, Me, and Tuscany stars Halle Bailey as Anna. She is, well, her dream was to be a chef, like her mother. By the way, guess what? Guess what Anna doesn't have?
What?
A father. So it's her and her single mother. They were both chefs. She wanted to become a chef, but then her mother got sick, and that thwarted the plan. She was in culinary school, and before she could graduate, she had to tend to her mother as she passed away. And every time she stands by a stove, she thinks of her mother and realizes she can't cook anymore. So she spends her days house sitting, moving from one house to the next. And she likes to go to rich people, sit rich people's houses so that she could try on their clothes and feel glamorous for a day until she gets caught and then fired. So with very little money and a friend who works at a hotel who can't help her anymore, she decides that maybe she needs to follow her dream and use the ticket to Tuscany that her mother bought her before she died. Or they were supposed to go on a trip, that she's going to use that ticket and kind of do one last hurrah in Tuscany. Well, not really having a good plan, she happens to meet Matteo at the bar at the hotel her friend works at. And the two really hit it off. He invites her up to the hotel room, says that she should follow her passions, that she should go to his hometown of Tuscany. And when they fall asleep together, they didn't do it. He wakes up, he's gone, he's moving on, and leaves a note to her saying, "Follow your dreams." And she decides to pack things up and take a trip to Tuscany. And because there's a giant festival going on, there's no hotel rooms. So she sneaks in, breaks into Matteo's home, and decides to stay there since that's her last option. And in the morning, Matteo's mother and grandmother arrive. They think she's a thief. They're going to call the cops. But instead, they see that she had taken Matteo's engagement ring that was in one of his rooms, puts it on, and they think that they're engaged, that Matteo and Anna are engaged. And they're all excited. And it's like, so she plays into it. They're planning this wedding. And then Matteo's best friend, Michael, who they have a falling out with, he just kind of is somewhat skeptical, but sparks start to fly. And yeah, things play out that way. I'll say this about You, Me, and Tuscany. It's a pretty by the books rom-com.
Yeah, it looked that way from the It looked that way from the trailer.
Yeah. When I was in my theater was pretty packed, and I swear the dumbest jokes, everyone was laughing at them. The theater was mostly women and their boyfriends and husbands. That's kind of what this is. Look, at the end, massive applause. People love this movie. Look, like I said, it's a fairly straightforward rom-com, which means it's predictable. You know what's going to happen. You know, she's there under false pretenses. Guess what? She gets exposed. And then there's the best friend who she has feelings for. That's fine. Look, I'll say one more thing about this. This movie reminds me of the 80s and 90s. I don't know if you noticed, but our two leads here are black. And it reminds me of the 80s and 90s. Why? Because back then, TVs and movies starring black people were just normal stories. They were just people. Right. The Cosby Show, Family Matters, all those shows, it was just a black family. And they acted normal. And guess what? Here are two characters. They're black and they act normal. And nothing about race is ever really brought up. It's kind of brought up, but as a way to diffuse things. For example, at one point, let's see, Matteo is, Matthew and Michael and Anna are kind of at odds at first when they first meet, much like a rom-com. And Anna says this. She says, considering that you and I are the only, and then Michael responds, the only people speaking English. And that's kind of how they resolve the whole black thing. That's the tone of race being brought into this movie.
That's actually funny.
Funny. And it's honestly, it's never brought up ever again in terms of race. Sure, she's black, she has black culture, but it's not the movie. It's about two people falling in love, which is, look, the final verdict is, it's an above average rom-com, but it's still a rom-com. So I will give it a recommendation only if you have a wife or a girlfriend or someone you want to impress. It's well done, and it's not going to infuriate you at any point in terms of modernity.
So do you recommend it?
Yeah, I recommend it.
I guess I'm going to end up seeing it. I thought I successfully avoided it.
It's it's by the books and it's good.
Well, that's good to hear. We need, this isn't $100 million movie. It's not gonna blow up the charts, but I predict this movie will be more profitable than Supergirl.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.